All right, man. I got Christian Allen, tailor made. What's up, brother?
Oh, not much. This is a long time coming.
I know, right? You've been on the podcast. It's just we've never actually done one together.
Yeah, no, it's your podcast is great, man. It's I contribute the Pestgeek Podcast and you really to making me more curious, I guess, and furthering my education myself on pest control. So I appreciate
That
you.
that's really the goal. I'm not pretending to be the guru. I'm more of a goat than a guru.
Yeah.
Uh, so I just tend to be, pointing people to ask more questions than they are.
Right.
I was just having a conversation about asking questions. Sometimes we ask the wrong questions and we don't get the right answers, and then we ask the right question of the wrong people and we still get the wrong answer. So I
Yeah.
guess it's just knowing which one to do. But yeah, you talked to me about the other day about the issue of burnout.
Yeah.
And I've gone through burnout. I've gone through different types of burnout in my life. I'm 53, so I'm not, a spring chicken. So there's things that I've gone through that most 20 something and 30 something year olds haven't gone through yet, when it comes to issues of burnout. And we were discussing that, and you told me about that you were kind of feeling a little bit burned out, but you're doing a million and one things like I am.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're trying to do too much and you're doing too much for sometimes for the wrong reasons. And a lot of that has to do to evaluate, you know, why are we doing what we're doing? What's the end game? Um, believe it or not, most people don't start with the end game in mind. I mean, why are we building a business? Is it to keep it, sell it, grow it? What do we want to end at the end of this? What do we want to accomplish? And that's a major question. But tell me, what have you been experiencing? What's been going on with you?
Yeah, so it's funny, that you said that most people don't start with the end in mind. I've started with the end in mind. So like
Okay.
I'm already where I'm at retired in my mind. That's kind of where I want to be at. And that might be some of my issues is I wanted to get there sooner than what is actually, where we actually are. But the end for me is selling at some point.
Hmm.
Um, either kids if we ever have kids, or a friend, or I don't care who, or working or Terminix. Because it's my retirement. So now that I'm on my own, I'm pretty much stopped paying into Social Security. But we all know Social Security may not be there by the time I get to retirement. It should be, but it may not be, and it's never, a very substantial enough to live
Right.
on. And I haven't, foolishly or not planning ahead, haven't really paid into a 401. Don't really have much money for savings, and I think a lot of that probably just has to do with, I guess, my generation. We live for the now per se, so
Right.
and don't really live for the future. Even though it's something, I think about it. It's kind of like going on a diet and eating well. I think
Hmm.
about I should be eating better as I'm munching down on a greasy burger and French fries and a shake. So it's kind of the same way with finances. Is I know I should be saving a little bit more than I am, but something comes along and I spend my money.
Right.
Um, but I guess what I'm going through is like I was talking to you. I was like, I don't want to say burnout because a lot of people throw that around,
Yeah.
and it is like a medical term or whatever. So I don't, haven't been diagnosed with burnout, haven't really seen anybody about it, but I feel tired. I'm tired, I guess, worn
Hmm.
out. Um, I know I'm still young, so I'm still grinding, especially with the company. We're still in the grinding
Hmm.
phase. Um, but I know even like 4 or 5 years ago, there was a time when 80 hours. While 80 hours was a lot of work, um,
Hmm.
it it didn't seem that bad. Like I could do 80 hours, and I was tired, but not like, man,
Right.
what the hell am I doing type thing.
Right.
Uh, and so some of it I might contribute it to 4 or 5 years ago I was working for somebody else. So there wasn't the stress of, are we making money? Am I going to make payroll this week? how is the business going to survive, or our schedule's not filled. I wonder if calls are going to come in, type that sort of thing. So I know there's, differences in how I'm working now versus when I was working before. Like before, I was just given work, schedule my stuff, go and do the work, and then go home per se. Versus now it's like it never ends. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, as mentioned, I am trying to do a million things. Um, so recently, I'm now trying to find who's not house on doing things. So we sat down with my two people and like, look, you guys are gonna start doing more work, um, and figuring out how to get all this stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going through right now, and I'm delegating stuff that can be done by somebody else. And while it might not be to per se Christian Allen standard, um, if it's done, it's good. And as long as they think it's good, I think it's good. Like then we're gonna be fine with it.
Right.
Um, but there's like I get home and I'm like, man, I got like 5 phone calls to return, and I'm like, man, I'm not going to return the phone calls. I'll let Sarah do it tomorrow, and that sort of thing. Like before, when I started, like it was like I get home, we work another 3 hours returning phone calls, scheduling stuff, and working on the website and marketing and stuff. Now,
Mm-hmm.
like my Facebook presence has, people make fun of me. I'm still on Facebook a lot, but I don't post a lot for the business like I like to. And there's still a lot of things that I'd like to get out there, videos made, pictures posted that I don't, just because I'm tired. I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, there's a lot of things that get neglected. I got a pile of paperwork and stuff that needs to be filed from bills and stuff that just needs to be filed for taxes, tax purposes and stuff that is just piling up on the dining room table. And definitely need to track inventory a little bit better than we are, and organizing things. So it's just a lot of stuff that on the back end of the business that has to get done that I'm letting be neglected, just because by the time I get done with everything, I'm tired, and
Yeah.
I don't like mentally, maybe physically I can still do it, but mentally I'm like drained. So
Let me ask you this. We said starting with the end in mind.
yeah.
Have you set a number that you
Oh,
want to get to, that you say, if I can get to this number, I can comfortably retire? How old are you now?
Uh, 30, 31, gonna be
Okay,
32 in months.
31. So if you technically want to retire at a specific time, and say have a number,
Yeah,
because you got the end in mind, but
yeah.
and there's
Well, it's a
it's a double-edged sword, because if you set a goal and
yeah,
then you reach it, then what? Do I quit or do I keep going?
yeah.
I
So I haven't really set a number per
mhm.
se. Like, again, I'm not. I should have a budget. I don't have a budget. We kind of wing it. So I've set my 5 year goals. So I do have that, and the down.
What is it? What's your 5 year goal?
Well, let me see. I can get it really quick.
Well, tell me off the top of your head. You don't have to be specific. I mean, it's
Off,
generalized. I
well,
mean,
well, off
you've
the
got a
top of my
concept.
head. Okay, so the biggest 5 year goal for me was to be able to hit a million in at least 5 years, to be out of the field, not like completely, but like not running a full route in
Hmm.
5 years.
Hmm.
Um, and like having a company that's like self sufficient almost, and that has enough pieces in place to where if I want to be out for a week because I want to go to Pest World in Hawaii, that I'm just going to go to Pest World in Hawaii and not
Right.
have to worry about it.
Right.
Because part of the real goal for me is, I never really wanted to own a company. So, my best friend told me about 3 or 4 years ago that I should start my own company. That I know enough pest control wise, that I'm working my ass to death for somebody else that's not going to care about me, like I think he's going to care about me. And I was like, no, no, I'm gonna keep busting my ass for this guy, and eventually he's going to retire. And we've talked back and forth before, and I'm just going to buy him. And I'm like, I'm here growing his company, probably hurting me because it's going to be a better valuation for him. But what I thought was, I am saving myself the startup phase that I'm not going to have to go through. I'll buy into a business that's already running with 15 plus years behind it, that I can just take over and just maintain and continue to grow, and grow a little bit more than what he was, because he really didn't want to grow. So I knew that. But I wanted to grow some to where it was kind of already pieces in place to where when I take over, I'm not 55, or I think he's 70 and still running a route, because he was 68 when retired, still running at least a half a route, pulling,
Right.
25 or 100,000 a year just on him. Um, so I had no desire to do that. If people want to run till they're 68, 70, more power to them. I don't have it in me to do that.
I don't think I'd want to run a route. Running a business and running a route are two different things. I had to come to terms with that a long time ago.
Yeah,
And we'll talk for obvious reasons we haven't grown to where I want to be, because
yeah,
my goal is, yeah, I want to have a retirement. Um, I want to be able to sell this and do the next phase of my life, my career, which is
yes,
what I've been building up for the last 10 years
yeah,
on the podcast, is a platform for myself to do something else when I do retire from this. But I will already have my platform built, so I'm looking out for that. Um, the idea that you got a person that doesn't want to grow. I mean, how did that work out? I mean, you obviously,
it didn't really work out.
yeah,
So that's why I left. It
yeah,
became too much difference of his opinions, between what I was looking to do and what he was looking to do,
yeah,
and then it ended up being one of the, because of the changes. So at first he was on board because we were making more money. I think we're probably a little bit more profitable because I was, condensing things. So before it was everybody makes their own schedule, and everybody runs their route. But it really wasn't defined on like the east part of Louisville I do, west part of Louisville somebody else does. It wasn't broken
right,
up. Going all over the place, crisscrossing, um, and I to me, I didn't know how we were making money driving all over God's
yeah,
green
right,
creation on a pest control. So
right,
I condensed it. I made it to where I was doing all the scheduling. I made the phone calls. We had the other three people running a route exclusively, and then I was running a half a route, full route in between, taking all the phone calls and doing everything. So we condensed it all. But one of his people that were there longer than me, um, didn't like it, so he started like pushing back,
of
and
course,
that's when, because I was expecting him to do more. That's ended up what it came down to. Before, Charlie was okay with doing like 5 to 8 jobs a day. When I took over, I was like, man, we need to do like 10 at least in an 8-hour day. If we can condense it, there's no reason why we can't do at least 10 a day,
right,
in 8 hours.
yeah,
So yeah, that's
yeah,
so. Long story short, I left, and like I tell people, I have nothing but respect for Charlie. And now that I've owned my business now 2 years, I probably have more respect for him, because there's a
of
lot of
course,
there's a lot of things like I hated, like writing down the production for the day, meeting every day, little things like that. That I'm like, man, this is tedious, this is stupid. Now I'm like, well, shit, we should have done that to start with.
right,
And so now I have two employees. We're implementing more of that stuff, and so I see why he was doing some of the things he was doing, but I was able to learn on what I still think that was shortcomings for him, that um, I changed, and we're doing a
yeah,
little bit for us.
yeah.
Um,
So
Going back,
you're a reluctant, what everybody's called a reluctant entrepreneur. I mean, I was more of a budding entrepreneur because this is all I ever wanted to do.
yeah,
I never wanted to work for anybody since I was 14. I had my own, I was basically self-employed. I would do odd jobs for everybody,
yeah,
15, 16, 17, 18. I would do that, but you're in the typical position that probably 80 to 90% of all entrepreneurs are in, is that, and you found out, the good thing about you is you found out sooner than later, because most people, say start up a business, start up in their mid 30s. But a lot, believe it, are in their 40s, late 40s, and some in their 50s, because they all of a sudden they get fired and they can't make what they used to make.
Well, that
Nobody will hire them for that amount.
I mean, that's where I was.
Yeah.
So, 2 years ago, before I started TaylorMade, um, I was so unhappy there for a lot of different reasons. And, the wife and I talked, and I knew I was going to have to take a pay cut to go anywhere. And as long as it wasn't a significant pay cut, I was going to be okay with it. But I ended up interviewing with two other pest control companies. One was a local large company. Well, both of them were large companies here. Well, actually, I interviewed three times. One was for a technician job, but they really were looking for lawn and ornamental. And all of my background's in structural pest. They
Right.
did pest control, but he called it pest control light, which ended up just being like exterior pest control only. And I'm like, that's not going to be a good fit for me because I just know too much. And I'm not going to be happy just doing ants and spiders and mosquitoes. Like there's enough
Right.
there to keep people happy, but I
If
like
you're
to,
a low level tech, a maintenance tech,
yeah,
and
I'm
that's all
more
you
than
want to do, that's excellent.
yeah, but I'm more
Yeah.
than a maintenance tech, and I knew that. So then there is another company that just had a technician position, and I was able to talk them up to like $18 an hour because they were going to start me up at 15.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's no way I can start at 15. I'm like, so I told him like I think I was at 22 or $23 an hour
Right.
with my previous employer. And I'm like, look, I get that we're not going to get anywhere close to the 22 or $23 an hour, but we gotta get somewhere close. There's a difference between taking a pay cut and like killing myself.
Starting
And
at the bottom completely
yeah,
as a new
and
tech.
I
Yeah.
know I'm gonna have to come in and prove myself. I'm like, but I get that I'm going to come in to prove myself, but I have 8 years experience. At the time, I still had my branch manager's license. I'm like, I'm not just a certified tech. I also got my branch manager's license, which I get it. I don't have managerial experience per se, and I'm okay with knowing that. But I did take the extra step and I took the extra test, so I
Right.
have more credentials than most of the other people. And I've done termites and wildlife and all this other stuff that most people don't have.
Right.
So they really wanted me. They talked to me. They were trying to make it work, but $18 an hour that wasn't going to work.
Right.
And then there was another company that locally that got bought out by Rollins, but they are starting out a new branch here, and they had assistant manager position open. And I think that was only going to pay like 35,000 or 40,000 a year salary plus bonuses and stuff. But I was willing to do that because I've never seen a big company operate. So I was like, if I could come in, see the structural, like how an operation is ran, I think that could only help me. And there's potentially upward mobility working with a company that's working with Rollins because they're selling it as, yeah, you work for us, but you work for Rollins. So if something comes up in like Orkin or another Rollins um, subsidy, you could go and take that position and
Right.
further yourself in career wise. So I was interested in
Right.
that. They ended up hiring in house, and then was only going to offer me a technician position, which with the potential to move up once something comes open. But again, they wanted to start me out at $15 an hour because they needed to train me for 2 weeks. And I was like, I don't. I mean, I get it. I got to see how you guys do things. I'm like, but then they're going to do production pay, and they want to start me at like 19%, and then it tops out at 22%. And I was like, look, I said, I negotiate with them. I'm like, look, I can start out at 19%. I'm like, but in 3 months, I need to do an like I want to have an evaluation because I feel like in 3 months, I can show myself that I deserve 22% because they said after 5 years, that's when you get the raise to 22%. I'm like, been in the industry for 8 years. So I'm
Right.
past 5 years. But the best they're going to offer me was 21%. And I almost took it. But then I was like, do I really want to go work for somebody else and be in the same place where I'm not happy? Um, so I ended up
What?
starting.
And I'll tell you about, you just mentioned like not happy like three times. So my burnout, and there's job burnout. Okay,
Yeah,
there's different types. We're talking mostly about clinical stuff, which I've been through, but there is job burnout where you're just basically just unhappy.
yeah,
So a lot of people are dissatisfied. They're always looking for, and it's typical with the generation, FOMO. And, if somebody offers me more money, I'm jumping ship. I get it. As a salesperson, I did the same thing. There's nothing wrong with that. It's when I got to the point to help you out and the audience is where I was so unhappy with what I was doing that I literally felt sick.
Yeah.
I felt like I would wake up in the morning like if I had the flu.
Yeah.
And I was just like mentally just checked out already. I wasn't there. And that's when I realized I would get up in the morning sometimes as I don't feel like going to work. For me, as a classified workaholic since I was like 19, people would say you're a workaholic. I mean, I work in a store. I was 19, 20 years old, and I'd be putting in 60 hours. So when I didn't want to get up anymore to go do this, there were signs that were telling me you're done.
Yeah.
And that's and people need to recognize that a lot of the generation is, hey, if you got to pay the bills, you got kids, you got a mortgage, you got golden handcuffs, you got to sit there and take it, because if there's nothing better in the market, not everybody has the opportunity to be in a major market where there's options.
Yeah.
Some people have, like, there's only 2 pest control companies in the entire, you know, 3, 4, 5 counties, because you're out so rural, you don't have a choice. You got to stay there and you got to do it. And I've talked to several people like that. So the job burnout where you're like, hey, I'm not getting anywhere. Nobody wants to pay me what I feel I'm worth. And that's always like, what's the market worth? It's whatever. Understand that once you get, this is what I've been talking about for the last 10 years, that once you get so far into your career, if you make it past the 1 to 3 years, you're at 1 to 3 years, you're pretty much easily replaceable.
Yeah.
You get to 6 to 7 years, you're not easily replaceable if they need you. But the reality is, how many companies really need an 8-year tech?
They really don't need it because most of the job, most of pest control can be done by a first year person.
Yeah.
Because it's easy, maintenance stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like right now, I just hired a guy.
yeah.
How much do I need a 40-hour tech, which is my minimum training? Anything more than that, when you're the average pest control company of less than 5 people, which is the average pest control company,
Yeah.
is less than 5 people, mostly 3. I can't sit there in a boardroom, give you 40 hours of classroom training, then say you're going to ride in for 2 weeks with a senior technician, learn everything he knows, and then let you loose. And then after 2 weeks of 3 weeks of all that, you're like, I still don't know anything because I haven't done anything.
Yeah.
I'd rather say, what do I need you to do in the next 40 hours? And what can I have you do, which is maintenance work only?
Yeah.
Train you for that, and then set you loose and have you produce for me. And then when those situations arise that I need you, I'll be there for you and I'll ride with you. And we'll, how often are you going to do a bed bug job? We do maybe 1 bed bug job a quarter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to spend 80 hours training a guy on bed bug biology when he's never going to do one. I'm not going to train him on termite because I don't want him to be a termite tech. I'm not going to train him on lawns because I don't want him to do lawns.
Yeah.
I need him to do maintenance work. As I see he can grow, if he can be more than a maintenance tech, then he's a tech 2 and a tech 3. And then, but the training is ongoing. But what do I need you to do in 40 hours?
Yeah.
And what
That's
I've
why.
learned is, yeah, and that's where what I do is I look and say, what can I, and then you talked about delegating, and
Yeah.
you got to learn to delegate tasks and not roles, because you
Yeah.
ain't big enough to delegate a whole role. It's
Yeah. We
like,
don't.
I need an admin people say, like, the classic question, right? I need to hire an admin because I have too much work that I can no longer do. But I don't have enough for her to do everything I do, because what you want is somebody to do billing, somebody
Yeah.
to do scheduling, somebody to answer those phones, sell the customer, get the appointments, and you want them to do 15 things. You wanting every time you want a purple unicorn like you're not
Well,
going to find it.
yeah, that was one of the biggest things that I realized when I was ready to hire was I knew I wasn't gonna find me. Like I knew,
Right.
like I know there's people like me, obviously. I mean, I'm not like a unicorn. I get that. Like I'm not special, but people like me and you probably have already started their business. Um, and that's just reality. And if they haven't yet, they're going to at some point, which is fine.
Right.
I don't, one of my people want to start their own companies, which my tech is like in the process of trying to start her own company with her husband. Like, I'm fine with it. Go
Hmm.
start your own company. I'm willing to tell you whatever I know,
Right.
good or bad, and you go do your own thing. But I know for the majority, like 80 to 90% of the population, they're happy with just an 8 to 5, 8 to 4 job.
Right.
They want to go to work, they want to do their job, and then go home and not think about it.
Hmm.
And so I knew that going into it, and I think I embraced that little too much. So when I first started with Sarah, she's my like my admin per se. Like, I started her out a little bit, and she had no experience in pest control, no experience in office. So like, we're completely training her from the ground up.
What
And it
did
was
she do?
like,
What did she do before, out of curiosity?
she was at Taco Bell for years, and then a couple warehouses. So just
Okay.
like a laborer. Um, and with kids, she kind of needed a flexible job to where she could do doctor's appointments and stuff like that. And she had some health concerns, so it's just a flexible job where everything we do is remote, pretty much. I mean, we do field routes, and our phone system is VoIP. So everything, you don't have to be at the office. Now, I prefer to be at the office. We do have an office. I feel like she gets more stuff done when she's at the office, but I allow her the flexibility if she has a doctor's appointment, work from home, go to your doctor's appointment, come back, finish working or whatever, or kid's sick, stay at home, that sort of thing, and get your stuff done. But she had to. It was on the job training. Really, it was like, so I hired her, sat with her for one day, and then I pretty much said good luck. And for better or for worse, her training has been real life training. All of our calls are recorded with Voice for Pest, so I'm able to listen to calls and be like, that wasn't very good. Let's do this instead. And we've built, some processes and scripts as we went along, because I've
Got it.
never. That's the other thing too, is I never had experience managing a call person, or I never had customer service training, professionally. Like, I just learned. I was 21 when I was hired, and all of those people or the soft skills I learned doing pest control. So,
Okay.
I did start out like, oh, hi, I think I'm here to kill some bugs for you, to now I know what I'm talking about and I'm comfortable talking to you. So it was, getting her to go through the phase of, I wrote down pretty much all of our processes on how I kill things and do things, and gave her a price sheet on how to sell. And if she had any questions outside of the normal stuff, call me. So we spent a lot of time on the phone.
Right.
Um, and she's gotten better. There's still a
Yeah.
lot of things that she forgets here and there. And over time, I've added more and more stuff on her. Now she's doing a lot. Probably not as much as she would working for a bigger company, but that's where we're adding more tasks onto her versus a job description. Like,
Yeah.
her job description is whatever the hell I give her. That pretty much that's, like, you're like my office manager, but she's managing me. She's managing my tech. She's managing all the phone calls and stuff coming in.
Right.
So